Welcome to the first of your introductory series on the fundamentals of natural style seduction. My name is James Marshall. I'm the CEO and founder for The Natural Lifestyles, which is the world's leading company for men's lifestyle design, personal change, and of course, natural style seduction. Since 2008, myself and my team have been coaching men all around the world in our unique style of natural seduction. Now, if you've come to this course, obviously you've been searching around on the internet looking for information on how to improve your dating life primarily. And you've probably come across a whole bunch of different dodgy sales pages and those animations where they promise to give you a pussy magnet or some kind of technique which is going to attract women 100% of the time without any need to really do much except for watch the video. This is not like that. The first thing I want you to understand in doing this course is that it requires you to take some action. If you intend to simply watch this video and then put it in your hard drive with dozens of other videos on natural seduction, I would suggest you save your time and just turn it off right now, because this is not for your entertainment, this is not for your intellectual contemplation. The purpose of this course is to give you some foundational, basic, but very important practical tools so that you can start to go out and meet women today. The first thing I want to look at in this course, and in this video specifically, is social anxiety, or what is often referred to as approach anxiety. Now, I don't like to use that term because what it does is it creates in your mind a pathology. All right? It creates a problem. If you give something a name and it's a negative name, now it's a permanent thing, now it's a disorder, it's like almost like you've got a disease, this approach anxiety disease. When in actual fact, there is no approach anxiety. What there is various ways that different people respond to social stimulus. Now, of course, on the very extreme end of the scale, you have some people who have very severe social anxiety disorders. Right? So this is something that is legitimately a mental health issue. And for people who have been diagnosed with this, then it is very important that you seek out a healthcare professional, someone who is a psychologist or a psychiatrist who can help you with that. I'm not a trained psychiatrist. I am a very, very experienced dating coach, life coach, inner game coach, meditation coach, and so I have many different tools that help people to break through these initial fears, these concerns, these worries that a lot of guys have when approaching girls. But if you have been diagnosed with SAD, then you need to talk to a health professional. For everyone else who thinks that they have a special type of anxiety when it comes to meeting women, that strangers, girls on the street, girls in a bar, girls in a university course, or wherever they might see girls around them, the first thing to understand is you're not alone. It is a very, very common thing for men to feel. I myself still feel some trepidation, some nervousness, some kind of physical activation in my body, butterflies in my stomach and so on, when there's a beautiful girl and I want to go and speak to her. I have been doing this professionally for nearly 10 years, and in my own personal life, I've been doing this for over 15 years. And what is this? I mean approaching girls that I have no connection to. I don't know friends of theirs. They're not in my social sphere at all. They're complete strangers. So for nearly 15 years, I've been running up to girls in various locations and trying to start a conversation, trying to introduce myself and trying to get in their pants. And yet, after that, thousands of approaches, many, many women that I've been with, I still feel something. All right, so understand the first thing is that you will always feel something when it's time to go and approach a girl. And that is not a bad thing. A lot of men try to learn some kind of technique, and they are often marketed techniques. There are dozens of products out there that promise you that you can get the woman without needing to feel embarrassed ever, without ever needing to feel nervous. And that is pure, unadulterated lies and marketing bullshit. Right? The reality is that there's a whole lot of people on the internet trying to sell guys a $50 product or $100 product or whatever kind of product. And these guys are simply internet marketers. They are often guys that have never approached a girl in their life. They have no track record. There's no proof of them on the internet of having any idea what they're talking about. They're simply guys who know how to jack the system and work the affiliates. And they're selling enough stuff that they get rich. And then guys download their products, watch them, read them, and take no action. So it is important to understand that if anyone is promising you a way to get great success with women without needing to face some of your fears, they're lying to you. Right? And it's a convenient lie because it sounds nice, right? If you could have some kind of special skill. When I was growing up, before the internet, that tells you how old I am, it was in Playboy magazines, they had pheromone sprays, right? It's like the idea you could spray this thing on you and the women would just smell you and their primal urges would be activated and they would throw themselves at you, right? And it was the same kind of bullshit, which was the idea that you don't need to do any work, you don't need to face your fears, there's some magic trick that will do the work for you. Not true. Sorry to burst your bubble. But the great thing is that there are methods, there are ways that you can learn to be more social and to be able to deal with your own social fears and trepidations that don't require hundreds of hours of therapy. They don't require you to necessarily go to a monastery and meditate for a long time like I did. They simply require you to understand the process that is happening in your mind, your emotions, and your body, the connection between these three aspects when it comes to meeting women, and to be able to move through your fears despite feeling them. Right? So as I said before, I still feel things happening in my body when it's time to go and talk to a girl. I just don't associate them as anxiety. I've relabeled them. I've renamed them. I've given them different meanings so that I understand, from my personal understanding is that when I feel butterflies in my stomach, maybe my throat goes a little dry, maybe my mind goes blank, or it starts racing and thinking about, oh, okay, what's going to happen if I talk to her and she has a boyfriend, or she's rude to me, or she looks me up and down and just sneers as if I'm a piece of shit. You know, how am I going to deal with that? I now have different psychological reframes and ways of viewing these experiences that mean that I can do it despite the fear, despite the feelings. I can still operate, and as a result, I get results. The men that get results, and what do we mean by results? I mean having choice. I mean being able to go and speak to a woman that you think is attractive and to be able to have a pretty good chance of starting something with her. There is no 100% guarantees ever that you can get every woman. Again, if anyone is promising you that if you learn a set of techniques, you will be able to get 100% of women, again, they're lying, because let's think a little logically, shall we? Like what man is attractive to every single woman on the planet? There is no man. Doesn't matter if he's Brad Pitt or the richest guy in the world, there's still going to be girls that just don't like him. There's still going to be girls that just are not into that type of guy. So you have to understand that another part of this is the grind, is knowing that not all women are going to like you, but if you consistently put yourself out there, if you consistently apply correct technique as well as correct mindset, then you will definitely get results. You will start to have choice in your dating life. The reality is that most men don't have any choice. When they do date a girl, when they do get laid, it's because of luck, circumstance, and often because the girl did a lot of the work. Most of the guys that I work with, if we were to look at the demographic, they're late 20s to late 30s guys. They've usually had a girlfriend or two, maybe they've dated a bunch of girls. Some of them haven't had almost any experience, but most have had some relationships. But they usually didn't choose those relationships. They ended up in them because they were sitting next to that girl at university, or they were introduced through friends, or maybe they lucked upon a Tinder date, and the girl liked the guy, she made it easy on him, maybe sometimes she even made the moves, and then they ended up in relationships. Now that's fine, that's how most people kind of end up in relationships, but for me, what that says is you're not living a life of abundance, obviously, and you're also not living a life of sexual or relationship choice. The reason most men come to me to learn seduction is because they want to be able to see a girl in any situation and go and try to start something with her. And they want to have, obviously, the best technology, the best tools to make that mostly as effective as possible. But none of that happens. None of the abundance, none of the dating multiple girls, none of the having a supermodel girlfriend, none of the having threesomes, none of the getting that feeling of being able to see somebody and make something happen. None of that gets to happen unless you can get over or work through this initial fear that you have. So let's first look at the meanings that you place on the fear and see if we can reframe those. What is a reframe? A reframe is simply choosing to think about a circumstance in a different way, and in this case, a way that is positive. We're always reframing things in our mind. The problem is that often people reframe things negatively. So what that means is something happens, an experience. Let's say you trip over on a crowded street with an ice cream and you drop the ice cream on the ground. To some people, they will immediately frame that or reframe that as a very embarrassing situation, and they will perceive that they've been humiliated, that they've had an awful day, that everyone's looking at them and laughing and thinking what a loser they are. And then obviously the effect of that is they're going to not feel very good about themselves, and the rest of their day is going to be ruined. Another person will simply view that as an amusing moment. All right, so they'll stumble. I'm a grown man, I'm 37 years old, I'm walking down the street with my ice cream. I don't know why I'm doing that, it's a hot day. And I drop my ice cream and I look like a fool for a moment. And then I pick myself up, have a little laugh at myself, at the absurdity of me trying to be so cool all the time, and realizing that it doesn't matter how cool I become, I can still trip over and drop an ice cream. And then I have a little laugh, and then I tell a friend about it later on and have a laugh about it. Right? That's a way to reframe it that makes the experience positive and makes my day a little bit better. Right? And this is obviously the crux of a lot of positive thinking and self-development, is being able to choose the way that you interpret things that happen to you. Because we can't control necessarily the outcomes or the environment around us, and we certainly can't control the reactions that girls are going to give to us when we go and speak to them. We can influence it, we can give ourselves the best chance, we can learn techniques that will work better than others, but at the end of the day, she's an individual, she's autonomous and independent, she has her own stuff going on in her life, and so you will get all sorts of reactions when you go and speak to girls. You may be surprised that most of them are not nearly as bad as you may be expecting. Many men perceive or create these movies in their head about what's going to happen when they go and talk to girls, and they always jump to the worst case scenario, that she's going to slap them in the face, call the police, scream rape, or some other extreme reaction. The truth is, I have watched a guy meet a girl in my live workshops. I put hidden microphones on the guys, I get them to go and speak to girls. So I have seen and listened in on that first moment when a man meets a woman thousands of times, with every type of guy from every race, height, demographic, age, meeting every type of girl. And I've seen everything that can happen. And of course, I've done this myself many times as well. And the very worst thing that I've ever seen is a girl kind of just like looking at the guy like he's a piece of shit and walking off. I think I've heard a girl say fuck off once or twice maybe in my life. I've never seen any violence. I've never seen a girl call the police. The most common thing that is going to happen, you're going to have to trust me on this because I have got more experience observing this and doing this almost than anyone on the planet. The most common negative thing that happens, like when a girl's not interested, is she just simply says a polite excuse, sorry I'm busy, I've got a girlfriend, I have to go, I don't have time right now, and then they walk off. That's the most common negative thing that happens. The most common positive thing that happens is the girl says, sure, take my number. And then the guy gets to meet her again and possibly end up in bed with her or end up in some kind of relationship. That's a pretty awesome gamble, right? If the worst thing that happens is a girl politely dismisses you, and the best thing that happens is you get to have sex with her, of course that's worth the risk. And yet, most men don't ever approach girls on the street or approach them very, very rarely. And for the most part, the reason they don't is because they're worried about what the girl is going to think of them, what the surrounding people are going to think of them. They have a sense that everyone is watching them and judging them all the time. Right now, I'm walking down a public street, ranting and raving with my cameraman in front of me, walking backwards, just to break the movie magic. That's what's happening right now. And of course, as we're walking by, there's people looking at me, there's people thinking stuff about me. That guy there probably thought something right now. And I'm at the point in my social freedom where I truly don't give a fuck about that, right? Like I am truly at peace with the fact that 100 people in the course of this video have looked at me, thought something, had an opinion, had a judgment. But do you think any of those people are going to be sitting there thinking about seeing me walking down the street talking to myself tomorrow or the next day or in a month's time? Do you think they're going to walk around carrying that judgment of me thinking, what a weirdo, what a loser? Of course not. And if they did, there would be something seriously wrong with them. That would be their problem, not mine. And that's exactly what happens to a guy that goes and approaches a girl. Let's say he goes up, says something, stumbles over his words, doesn't know what to say, and then says, I got to get out of here. What's the girl going to think? Okay, she might think, all right, some shy dude came and talked to me, or that was weird. Maybe she'll make a judgment about the guy. Wow, what a loser. Probably not. Probably she'll probably just think, oh, okay, some guy wanted to pick me up and he got nervous and off he went. Oh well, that happens. Understand that if beautiful women do get a lot of attention from men, they do get approached by men, and they have had all sorts of experiences of seeing guys do all sorts of things, get embarrassed, get aggressive, get reactive, be apologetic. They've seen most of that stuff, and it's probably not a big surprise. And even if it is something surprising, okay, tomorrow, is she going to remember it? Maybe. In a week, is she going to be thinking about it? Very unlikely. In a month's time, is she going to give a shit about that? No. Are all the people that saw you go up and try and talk to a girl and it maybe not work? Well, firstly, do you think all of them were sitting around watching you? Very unlikely, because most people are thinking about their own shit. Most people are in their heads thinking about, do I look cool? Are people looking at me? Am I wasting my life? What does it all mean? They're in their heads doing their own thing. Most of them are simply not thinking about you. And occasionally, people will take notice. They'll look around and notice that something's happening, and yes, they'll have a thought, possibly they'll have a judgment, but they're not carrying that around with them all day. They're not judging you forever. And if they are, as I said before, that's something seriously wrong with them. So the first reframe that you need to have is to acknowledge that, oh yeah, I perceive that people think about me much more than they do. It's kind of a negative narcissism. It's like an assumption that everyone's sitting around judging you all day, as if they have nothing better to do than to think about you. Reality is, if they judged you, it was for a moment. If they thought about you, it was for a moment. Maybe they'd mention it to their friends. Hey, I saw this guy approach a girl today and it didn't work. Really? What is that a cool story? Like, so what? Who's going to be like, wow, what a fascinating gossip. That's not even noteworthy. So the reality is that people don't give a shit about what you're doing socially. We've proven this countless times on our workshops, where on the first day we get guys to do all sorts of crazy social freedom drills. And what I mean by this is these are exercises that deliberately get you judged, going and doing strange things to strangers to see what it's like to be really judged. And interestingly enough, you can do very outrageous stuff. You can scream and shout and dance on the street. You can lie down. You can do anything that is short of like pulling your pants down and exposing yourself. And for the most part, people just don't give a shit, or it's slightly interesting to them, or they're momentarily shocked. And that's the point of us doing these drills, is to show guys the reality of how people really respond is very different than your mental reality. When you haven't had a lot of experience with this, it's very easy to perceive that it's going to be very negative, it's going to have lots of consequences going and talking to girls. The truth is the consequences are almost zero. They are really just moments, minutes maybe, of feeling embarrassed, feeling like you're a bit of a fool, feeling like you're not quite sure what you're doing. But that is necessary. That is an important, vital part of the process of becoming good with women, is understanding that you will not always look cool. You'll never be able to have the right thing to say every time. I have years of experience at this. I'm good. I'm very good at this, but I still fuck it up. I still say the wrong thing. I still embarrass myself sometimes, but it's so worth it for all of the exceptional experiences that I've had. Hello there, how you going? All of the exceptional experiences that I've had along the way. The ability to reach out and say hi to somebody. The ability to go and start something that wasn't going to happen just through chance is, in my opinion, possibly the most important skill that a man can ever learn. And it is not a skill that you're taught at school. It's not a skill that you're taught anywhere unless you are lucky enough to have, I don't know, an older brother or some kind of mentor or a social circle that was very, very social, and you learnt that early on. Many guys don't have that. They're reasonably isolated from women. Maybe they're involved in mostly technical fields. Maybe they went to an all-boys school. Maybe they were just shy, like me. I was a shy dork, nerdy flute player in high school, primary school, so I just didn't have a lot of exposure to women. I just didn't learn to socialize with them that well, and so I had to train myself in later life. In my mid to late 20s is when I really focused in on this. And I'm so glad that I did, because going through those initial beginner's hell, the growing pains of facing my ego, facing my fears, and learning to reframe from negative meanings to positive meanings meant that now I get to live a socially free and sexually abundant lifestyle. The second way that is really important to reframe your experience with going to approach women is to not have a success-failure dichotomy. And this is common when guys are starting to go out and approach girls or trying to get started in this direction, is to feel like if I approach a girl and it goes really well, I say all the right things, she likes me and she gives me her phone number, that is a success. And on the other side, if I approach a girl and it doesn't go well, she doesn't seem to like me, or she blows me off, or we have a chat for a little while and then at the end I ask for a number and she says, sorry, I've got a boyfriend, or I'm not interested, that you perceive that as a failure. If you go about approaching women from this perspective, I guarantee you'll give up pretty soon, because it's pretty demoralizing. Like if you're going and doing something where 9 times out of 10 you feel like it was a failure to try, then what's the motivation to continue? Why would you do the dozens and hundreds of approaches that is necessary, and it is necessary, to get good at this, if you thought that every time you didn't get a number or every time the girl didn't throw herself at you that it was a failure? You wouldn't continue. And that is the way most men perceive it. So it's really important to start looking at the way that you define success. Let's say you're an average guy, normal guy, and you've never approached a girl before. Every time throughout your life, and you must be able to associate with this, I certainly was, for up until I was 26 years old, every time I walked down the street, I saw 10 girls that I would love to meet. Beautiful women, the women of my dreams, so my type. And I just see them walk by and I would just be filled with this sense of hopelessness and regret. No, actually not even regret, because regret assumes that I had a choice. I just didn't even think that I had a choice. It was just like, there's another girl going by that I could never meet because she's not going to come into my social circle. The only way that I could meet an amazing woman was to wait until she came into my social orbit, till a friend introduced me, until she came into a university course or in my workplace, or was at a gig where my band was playing and then I saw that she was chatting to someone that I knew. Right, so I was always looking for like these tiny little opportunities, hoping that some pretty girl would come into my sphere or my orbit. Occasionally they did, but I would have to wait months to meet a girl that was just okay. Right, so every time I saw a girl walk by, that was just like a sense of, fuck, I'll never meet a girl like that. Once I was able to walk up and say hello, instantly my world changed. I went from living in scarcity to living in abundance. Now that you may say, well, what? That's not abundance. Okay, so you could go and you could go and say hello to a girl. Doesn't mean you were dating or having sex with her. True, but it did mean that I now had infinite choices. Well, many billions of choices, not infinite, but billions of choices about who I met. Now, of course, when I first started out, I would go and I'd say hi, and then I didn't know what to say next, and sometimes that's all. I would just go and say hi, and she'd be like, hi, and I'm like, bye, and then I'd run off, right? But to me, I perceived even that, going up and saying hi and bye, as a success. Because compared to spending 26 years walking around the streets going, oh boy, I'll never meet a girl like that, that was a massive difference. Psychologically, emotionally, it meant that I felt suddenly like, okay, cool, I have some choice in my life. I can go and make things happen. I actually can start to control my own destiny. And if I was able to say hi and that girl smiled at me and said hi and then walked off, well, it's not such a great jump now to start a proper conversation. From there, I can see that I'm not light years away from making this work. Right? So I got quite rapid success when I first started cold approaching, because I'd spent years working on meditation, years working on adjusting my psychology. So quite quickly I could shift and reframe the negative ideas that were in my head into positive ones. I could start to reframe my definitions of success. I could break them down and chunk them down into smaller pieces. And that's what I'm suggesting that you do right now. As you go out, even if it's simple things, warm-ups, for example, and I'll be explaining warm-ups in another one of these videos, even if it's just a simple wave and saying hi to a girl, if you go and do that 10 times a day, and previously you didn't do that, now you are socially interacting. I know it's a small level, but it's actually a major step up from 0. And then you can frame that in your mind as a success. Cool, I went and engaged with 10 people, even if it was momentarily, I engaged with 10 people in one day. Cool, if I do that every single day, that's thousands of people that you can be meeting in a year. And then from there, it's only a small step to just start a conversation, introduce yourself. And then from there, it's not such a big step to say, hey, what do you think about going and getting a coffee and getting to know each other? Right? These things start to become achievable. Whereas if you perceive that, okay, the only thing that works, the only thing that's useful, the only thing that is a success is doing some perfect pickup, then, okay, you're going to give this up before you get to the point where you get perfect pickups. Right? So as you start to go and learn the skills of natural seduction, which are outlined in my 5 principles of natural seduction, which is my overarching thematic system, as you start to develop these, you'll see that there are many, many milestones or stepping stones along the way in one interaction. Of course, just going over and saying hi is a success if you do that. If you get to engage the girl with good eye contact, shake her hand, introduce herself, another success. If you get to ask something about her and she invests in some way and tells you a little bit about herself, a success. If you reveal something about yourself, start to express who you are, what kind of man you are, another success. And if you express your desire, your intent, which is my 2nd principle in natural seduction, being able to express verbally, emotionally, physically, with your full being, why it is that you're here, that you're interested in her as a woman. Awesome, another success. Now you notice that, and then there's many more, leading up to the phone number, leading through the dates, leading into the bedroom, leading into relationships. There are so many different stages along the way that you probably right now don't have perfect experience with, otherwise you wouldn't be watching this video. And by going step by step and recognizing that each of these steps, as you get experience over and over again with asking for a phone number, or over and over again for going and cold approaching, or over and over again to verbally stating your intention with a girl. All of these things have to be practiced. And if you do, every time you do them, you should perceive them as a success. Of course, it's not that you delusionally just go, I'm awesome, everything's perfect, I don't have to change. Of course, it's not like you need to take feedback. All right, so I went and approached a girl, I said hi, she said hi to me, I introduced myself, okay, we got there, and then I said, so what are you doing today? And she said, oh, I'm sorry, I've got to go, and she ran off. All right, sure, I want to think about, what could I have done differently? Was there something that I did there that affected that? And as you start to critique yourself, which is not so easy, that's why people come to us for live coaching, because my job is to be the expert eyes that looks at a guy as he's approaching and goes, all right, you're standing too close. Yeah, you're facing her dead on and you were too close, so that put her under pressure. Or you kept on breaking eye contact when she asked you a question. Or the many dozens and dozens of things that I teach a guy to improve his game. Of course, it can be done alone. I taught myself. Most of my development in seduction happened before I had any mentors or had any other guys that were really good around me, but it did take me many years to figure it out myself. There are faster ways, and that is to find expert coaching, which is where we come in. However, if you're in a situation and you come out of it and you think to yourself, all right, yeah, now that I think about it, I was probably talking way too fast and too much, and I could see a time when I could see that she kind of zoned out as I was blabbing about my job. All right, maybe I need to chill out next time and ask her a question. All right, I'll note that, and next time I'll try. But beating myself up about it, going, you fucking loser, you just were talking too much and talking too fast, no chick's ever gonna like you. Is that good coaching, right? Like, you've got a life coach in your head. Would you hire a life coach who just told you were a loser and told you that you were shit and you were never gonna get good? Would you hire a dating coach who was gonna do that? Of course not, because that would be a bad coach. So don't allow yourself to be a bad coach to yourself. Of course, don't allow yourself to be like a mum who's encouraging their daughter to go on like America's Got Talent when she definitely doesn't have talent, and like everyone's just pretending that she's a great singer when she's not. Okay, you don't want to be delusional about it, but at the same time, you don't want to be nasty to yourself. It's that middle ground of recognizing that you have flaws, that you have things that need to be improved, and congratulating yourself every time you step out of your comfort zone. Every time you do something that you previously didn't do, you're now moving very fast in the direction that you want. And I know that sometimes it doesn't feel like that. If you go and you do 20 approaches and the girls reject you or they don't give you their phone number, you may feel like, oh, this is so hard. I'm spending so much time and so much effort and I'm getting nothing. Be careful of that kind of thinking, because is that really true? Did you really spend so much time? How long does it take to approach a girl and get rejected? A minute? So if you got rejected 20 times, that's 20 minutes really. Okay, travel time, we might add some extra time to it, but the actual experience took 20 minutes. Is that so much work? Is it really difficult to do that? I know it sometimes feels difficult, but a lot of that is just the way that you're adding mental resistance to something that is actually quite simple. And is it worth it? Well, fuck yeah, of course it's worth it, because what's the alternative? The alternative is for the rest of your life, you watch the girls walk by. Do you want to do that? Do you want to be living inside a fishbowl, just like watching beautiful women pass you by for the rest of your life? Because the reality is, it's very unlikely they're going to come and talk to you. It's unlikely that many of them are going to bump into you through serendipity or because of chance. I've coached men who literally owned hairdressing salons and nightclubs and modeling agencies, right? I've had clients who own those three things, not all of them, separately. So you would think, okay, cool, if you owned a modeling agency, done. If you owned a club, awesome. If you owned a hairdressing salon, great. You just have endless streams of women. Of course, they're going to want to bang you because you're the boss, right? Well, it didn't work that way. Those guys came to me after investing huge amounts of money, huge amounts of lifestyle energy into trying to create a passive income source of girls, and recognized that, okay, just because they had some more access to some of these pretty women didn't mean they knew how to seduce them. Also, because they were the boss, it added all these extra weird layers. The girls didn't want to hook up with their boss because then they could lose their job, right? So the answer is not own a nightclub. I mean, if I owned a nightclub, I could make that work for sure. Like that would be useful, right? I could go out, cold approach girls, bring them into my social sphere. The girls would, of course, the status and things does have an effect on girls. Yeah, I could make that work. That would be an assistance to me. But I was a musician for 10 years. Not a very famous musician, but in my city in Melbourne, I was well known. We used to play gigs where 500 people turned up. You know, we had fans. I occasionally got groupies, not very hot ones. I did the rock star thing on a low level. And the interesting and kind of tragic thing was, like, I started playing music to get chicks, flat out. I like playing music. I like the actual performance, but I really did it to try and get girls. And occasionally, yeah, I did get some girls out of it. No one that special. Occasionally girls would go, oh, he's cool, he's in a band, and they would bang me. But what I discovered when I was 26 and I started going out and cold approaching, within a week, I was dating women that were way hotter and way better quality than any girl I'd ever got through being a musician, right? Think about that. That was a massive wake-up call for me. It was like, wow, I put a huge amount of effort into creating something to try and get women that was not yielding very good results. And it was supposed to be one of the things that works, right? So when you think about effort, most men are putting huge amounts of effort into getting girls in some way, whether that's putting huge amounts of their money into a nice car, a nice watch, fancy suits, expensive bottles of champagne at nightclubs, paying huge entry fees, paying for subscription fees on dating sites, paying for super likes on Tinder. Like, remember that money is your time. Unless you're born with a trust fund, money is your time. You have to work for that. So that's huge amounts of effort that men put into areas that don't really make much difference. Is it a bad thing to have a nice car? Nah, but I've never had a car, and I've had sex with many models and beautiful women, and they've never cared that I didn't even have a car. I've never worn a watch because I just find them a bit uncomfortable, and I know that they're unnecessary. Has that detracted from my ability with women? Like, I've never been somebody who's been very wealthy or who's been trying to compensate in those ways. And I've worked with many clients who've done that, who spent literally tens of thousands, if not more, dollars on external status symbols, hoping that that would get them success with girls. And it didn't, right? Even if once in blue moon a girl kind of was impressed by the Rolex or impressed by the car, so what? She's going to be impressed by the guy who's got the next most expensive Rolex or the next level up Audi, right? That's not the kind of girl you guys want to approach, you want to attract. Do you want to attract gold diggers? No, you want to attract girls who are beautiful, have high self-esteem, are interesting, cool chicks, and who are interested in you as a person. And therefore, you're going to need to learn how to approach them. Whether that's on the street, in a bar, at a party, at a work event, doesn't really matter. Wherever it is, even if it's at a party where you know the host and it's insinuated that it's okay to talk to the girl, that you still need to do it right. And the best way I know to practice for those moments is to be able to hit the streets and talk to girls there. So that's what I want you to take away from this first introductory video, is mostly about reframing the psychology, the way that you perceive the experience of going and meeting strangers. Remembering that the first reframe is to recognize the reality is no one gives a shit. I'm standing in a square now ranting and raving at myself. Dozens of people are walking by. Most of them don't even look. If they do, they look and think for 10 seconds and then they're gone again. No one gives a fuck about your life except your parents and your friends and the girls that you're going to have interactions with. You're just another face in the crowd. So use that to your advantage. It means actually that you can be really socially free. You can start going and doing weird stuff on the street, and you can go and approach girls, and even if the girl perceives you or judges you as a weirdo, that is okay, because in an hour she will have forgotten about you, or in 24 hours she will certainly have forgotten about you. And you get to walk away with not a humiliating defeat, but a learning experience, a success, right? Because every time you go and practice that simple stuff, wave, hi, meeting a girl, shaking hands, that is building momentum and building life experience, so that at some point in the future, probably much sooner than you think, you're going to meet a girl that you find exceptional, she's going to think you're awesome, and you guys are going to have a wonderful time together. The second reframe, as I've said, is to start looking at the way you define success and failure. In this area, the reality is when you first start out, you get more knockbacks than you get offers. That's just the reality. Doesn't matter of what techniques you learn, doesn't matter what secret method you downloaded from the internet from some guy who promised you the moon. You're going to get more girls saying thanks but no thanks than you are girls who are going to say fuck yes. All right? And that is going to have to be a reality that you are going to have to learn to come to peace with. And the way I come to peace with it is to firstly understand that no one is 100% perfect at this, that girls are just sometimes just going to like you and sometimes just going to not like you for reasons that are outside your control. It's not personal. She doesn't know you. She can't really judge you, right? So how can she judge you as a person based on 1 minute of conversation? All she can judge is your approach, you know, the vibe that she got, and much of that is colored and affected by her own personal mood, her own personal preferences, stuff that you don't have control over. So there's no point in even worrying about it. You worry about the things that you can control, which is your body language, your posture, your speech, the things you talk about, the way you pull the trigger, all the stuff that we teach in our Natural Seduction 5 Principles framework. You worry about that, and then the rest, okay, that's outside your control. So therefore, you reframe the knockbacks, as they inevitably come, as successes, because they were. Every time you stepped out of your comfort zone, every time you reached out to interact with a stranger is a success. And those successes will start to compound with a positive mindset, positive reframes on them. You will start to get addicted to the process, because the process is actually really enjoyable. It's difficult as well. It can be humiliating. You can feel shit about yourself, but it is a hugely liberating experience to face your own personal limitations and fears, to face what you perceive to be the boundaries of your experience, and to realize that, nah, actually, there's way more out there for you. That's when life gets really, really exciting. That's all from me for episode 1. This is James Marshall from The Natural Lifestyle signing out. See you in the next video.